topics, vector spaces and linear transformations, are studied in linear algebra. Linear algebra was introduced through systems of linear equations and matrices. In early 1830s, German mathematician Grassmann worked on restructuring the foundations of mathematics, and he discovered linear algebra. Italian mathematician Peano was the first to give the modern definition of vector spaces and linear maps in 1888. An important development of vector spaces is due to the construction of function spaces by French mathematician Henri Lebesgue. Linear algebra has two aspects. Abstractly, it is the study of vector spaces over fields and their linear maps. Concretely, it is matrix theory. And matrices occur in all parts of mathematics, said by Friedrich Gambron in his Notes on Linear Algebra. There are lots of applications for linear algebra. Here is an application of it. Multimedia like images, sound or movies are stored in vector or matrix form, as an image is an array of pixels, a sound is an array of amplitudes, a movie is given by an array of pictures and a sound. Vector spaces involves two operations. One is addition and the other one is scalar multiplication. Addition of two vectors means we consider in the collection of vectors, namely capital V, two elements are considered from V and they are added. Now, as an example, if we consider R2, the collection of all ordered pairs where each component is from the field of real numbers, adding two vectors are known. Now, as for scalar multiplication is concerned, when we consider a number, say for example in R, if we consider the number 2 and then we consider in R2 the ordered pair 2, 1, then when this 2 is operated on this vector 2, 1, we get 4, 2. Remember that 4, 2 is already present in R2. And this 2, 1 is also present in this R2. And with the help of scalar multiplication, the same 4, 2 is interpreted in this way. So it is that scalar multiplication is already present and that is explicitly given as the definition. Okay, so in general, if we consider alpha in F, that is from the field F we take alpha, and we consider V in capital V. So where do we have that alpha V? It should again be in V only. So this is how that scalar multiplication in that vector space, it plays a role there. Now we have in section 4.1 elementary basic concepts in topics and algebra by Einstein, we have the definition, formal definition of a vector space over a field F. A non-empty set V is said to be a vector space over a field F if V is an abelian group under addition. If for every alpha in F, V in V, there is defined an element written alpha V, and is called scalar multiplication in V, subject to the four conditions which we name for convenience sake as V1, V2, V3 and V4. V1 is alpha into V plus W is alpha V plus alpha W. Alpha plus beta V is alpha V plus beta V. And alpha beta V is equal to alpha beta V. 1 into V is V. Now the first two V1 and V2 look like your distributive law in the case of rings, but they are not distributive laws, because you don't have all the three elements to be from the same collection. So it looks like V1, V2 looks like your distributive law, but it is not so. So with this in the fourth one, it will look like the existence of identity element, multiplicative identity element, but it is not so. And here that one represents multiplicative identity present in F. And third one looks like your associativity, but it is not associative law. Now, as examples, we see that first every field is a vector space over itself and over its subfield also. Now, in the case of the collection of all complex numbers, we can have the set of all complex numbers to be a vector space over itself and over its subfield also. As another example, if you consider collection of all ordered n tuples where each entry or rather component, each one is from the field F, we can have this collection to be a vector space over F by defining the operations component-wise addition and component-wise multiplication, scalar multiplication as given below. You consider two elements, say alpha 1 ordered n tuple, alpha 1 etc. alpha n, and beta 1 etc. beta n ordered n tuple. So when we add this, we get the ordered n tuple alpha 1 plus beta 1, alpha 2 plus beta 2, and so on, alpha n plus beta n. It is defined component wise. And the same way is the scalar multiplication. So then we can have this Fn over F to be a vector space. So in particular, by taking F as C or the field of real numbers, we can have them to be vector space over C and R respectively. Next comes the collection of all polynomials over F, which we denote as F square bracket X. Then V is a vector space over F and a usual addition and multiplication of polynomials. Then as a particular case, we consider the set of all polynomials of degree less than n. Then again, using the same usual operations for polynomials of addition and multiplication, we can have this V suffix n, which we denote this collection to be V suffix n as a vector space over F. Another important example is collection of all n cross n matrices over F. So that will form a vector space under the usual matrix and scalar multiplication of matrices. And next, the last one, what we are going to consider is the set of all complex valued continuous functions defined on the closed interval 0, 1. It's a vector space over F, or rather over C, under pointwise addition and scalar multiplication. So by pointwise addition, we mean f plus g of x as f of x plus g of x, and scalar multiplication is lambda f of x as lambda into f of x for all lambda in C and x in the closed interval 0, 1. Now here is an example which is not a vector space. You consider the R2, the same R2 what we mentioned earlier, but define the scalar multiplication in this way. Scalar multiplication of any vector xy is the ordered pair 0, 0. In that way, scalar multiplication is defined. Then we cannot have this V to be a vector space over R for the reason that 1 into V can never be V, because it will be only Z, the ordered pair 0, 0. Now we have an important lemma which has got application later, because in this lemma that we say that the effect of scalar on a vector 0 or the effect of scalar 0 on any non-zero vector being the same, we will not distinguish between this scalar 0 and vector 0. So that is established in this lemma. So the first one, first subdivision says that alpha 0 vector is 0 vector for all alpha in F, and you have capital V, everything happening in the vector space V over a field F. And scalar 0 with vector V is also vector 0 for all V in V. And third one, minus alpha V is equal to minus alpha V, and in the same way alpha minus V is also minus alpha V for all alpha in F and V in V. Now if V is a non-zero vector, then the relation alpha V equal to 0 should imply that the scalar should be 0. So the first one, to establish the first one, we consider alpha and the scalar multiplication of alpha with vector 0, and this vector 0 can be rewritten as the vector 0 plus 0, and by V1 we have already mentioned v1, v2, v3, v4, the axioms in a vector space. So we have alpha 0 plus alpha 0. So addition of two vectors, when we add two vectors, when we get the addition of two vectors again to be one of the vectors, then of the two vectors one should be the additive identity. So using that concept that we get alpha 0 to be 0 vector. And when we consider scalar multiplication of the scalar with the vector v, the scalar 0 can again be written as we had in the case of vectors. Here also the same concept, 0 plus 0 that we consider, and by v2 we have this step, and this is a vector, this is a vector. The sum of two vectors giving us the same vector means one of it should be the additive identity in v, which is 0 vector. So we get the scalar 0 with vector v to be the vector 0. And to prove the third one, we make use of the second subdivision, and in this the 0 we can replace it by alpha plus of minus alpha, and we make use of v2 to get this step, and again you have a vector plus some other vector giving the additive identity, means whatever we have of the two, one should be the additive inverse of the other. So we have this minus alpha v to be equal to minus of alpha v. In the same way we can establish that alpha minus v is equal to minus alpha v. So that gives the third part of this lemma. And for the last one, we assume that alpha v equal to 0, and our aim is actually to establish that alpha is 0. On the contrary, if we assume that alpha to be non-zero, then because it is a non-zero member in a field F, its inverse should exist. So we consider our v, and that is by v4 can be written as 1 into v. This 1 is replaced by alpha inverse alpha, because alpha is non-zero, inverse exists. So this can be this 1 can be replaced by alpha inverse alpha, and by v3 we have this step, but alpha v is given to be 0 vector, so alpha inverse 0 vector should be the 0 vector. So ultimately we get our v to be 0 vector, but in the assumption that we have v to be non-zero vector. So that's a contradiction to the assumption or the hypothesis given that v is non-zero, and so alpha should be 0.